How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Bill, and in today's video we are lifting the Bronco one more time. If you watched any of the previous videos we did lift this once already. We did the four-wheel parts level lift, which just added... It was just a spacer lift that added these spacers. If you just did the lift, it added this spacer. If you did the level lift, it also added this additional spacer in the front to give it the level, as well as that little bit of lift gave us 2 inches of lift. What we're changing to, I was hoping to be changing over to a whole new coilover system by now, but still waiting on one of them to come out. So what we have now, though, is the BDS 4-inch lift, which is essentially the same exact kit that the Maxlider Brothers 4-inch kit is. It's a BDS Upper Control Arm right here. Hey, here's the new BDS one. This thing is stout. Here's the stock one, and that's stock one. That's the BDS one. We can see it installed over here. In comparison to, well, I think I already got it. Well, I got it halfway apart on this side over here. And then it is also a spacer lift, sort of. It's a more advanced spacer lift, because here, this is the spacer that's going to go on top, and what I like about this is it's actually got an angle to it, so it's going to help with the camber issues that I had with the four-wheel parts ones. And at its lowest point, it is 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches as well, just like that is, but on the taller side it's a 1/4 inch difference. So it's 1.5 inches there. So if we're doing this difference, almost the same exact size spacer, why bother with this? And that's because we also have to take apart the coilover, and this kit also readjusts the preload. So you're adding 2 inches on this side and 2 inches on the other side by moving everything up. As far as getting the shocks out, the coilovers out of the front end, I didn't record anything as far as getting the coilovers out. I already did a video on that. If you're interested in it, up here in the corner, I'll put a link to it when I did the initial four-wheel parts install, because that's where I showed, kind of tearing everything apart. So I'm going under the assumption that you already know how to get the coilover out of the vehicle. You already have it on your bench, and you're looking to do the preload steps to adjust the coilover and then go from there. So again, video's up in the corner if you're not sure how to get the coilover out. If you already got it out, you know what you're doing, and just not sure how the preload on this kit works, well, let's continue on. Now, like I said, this is pretty much the exact same kit as the Maxlider kit, as far as I know. It has the BDS Upper Control Arms, and then it was actually a zone lift for the 3/4 inch puck lift. It's 4 inches if you have black shocks, pretty much. So not Badlands, Black Diamond, Base, Big Bend, any of those that use the black shocks that don't have the upgraded suspension, you'll get 4 inches. If you have Sasquatch or anything, like one of the bigger ones that are using the yellow shocks, you'll get 3 inches of lift over that, from what I understand. So, yeah, there's different kits. One for if you have black shocks, one if you have yellow shocks. And it's about 3 inches for the yellow shocks and 4 inches for the black shocks. In order to take the top hat off, we're going to have to compress the spring. And before I did that, where is it? On the front side here, I put a mark where everything's lining up here on the front too. Just put a mark, because once you compress this, everything can spin, and you want to be able to put everything back together the way it came apart. Now that we got the spring compressor on there, just going to tighten it a little bit at a time on each side. Alright, so that spring is compressed. You want to be careful around it, because if that were to pop off, that would cause some damage. So what I found to work, it's also got a 10mm head on it. I ran into is trying to take this top hat nut off. Doesn't want to come off, doesn't want to break free. So I just got a deep socket for the 19mm, and then a smaller 8mm. Now I could turn, it's still turning everything inside, it's turning the whole strut, but it's holding the nut still now. We also got to pull this pin out here. And we can go ahead and pull this off. Now our top hat's off. We got this alignment pin. We can go ahead and pull that out. That's probably an easier thing to do while everything's still attached. But we got the top hat off. Now we want to carefully pull pull everything off of here. Before this will pull off, there's this little cap on the end. I don't know how well you can see that, but and a little cap here on the end. You got to tap off of there. Just got a little punch. Well, it's kind of a big punch, but I'm going to take that little cap off, slide this off, slide jeez. This is plastic, so you don't want to beat on that too hard. Then we also have the bottom of our strut. So this is what you want to end up with. A bare, nothing on it. You got your shock. We got our white lines to line things back up. And we're ready to start putting stuff together. What we have to put on there is a bump stop and the adjustment collar for the preload adjustment collar. So instead of this sitting right here at this point, this is going to slide on there in that same spot, and then this is going to sit on top of that. So we're actually going to be sliding everything down or up depending on which direction you're looking at. That's just going to slide on there. Now this is going to slide back over there. I'm going to line our lines back up. Give this a couple of taps. And we should be good to go. Now we can put this piece of plastic back on. You can slide this boot back on. Now we want to add our bump stop. And then add the cap back onto the end. They're exactly 1.5 inches. If we measure where the lines were, that did cut off where they were meeting. Now it's 1.5 inches moved up here. And now we can put our spring back on. That should be enough to get us started. Alright, now we have everything lined up again, pretty much, but when we put this top hat on, it's going to change this bolt pattern. So right now the way it installs on the vehicle, these two bolts are facing out and that bolt's facing in. But if we put this that on there, then it puts the one bolt on this side and the two bolts on that side. So before we could tighten this down, we want to rotate the top hat 180 degrees, but we want to leave everything else lined up. Okay, so now when we put this top hat on, or the spacer on, like so, we're going to have we want to make sure it's lined up. Now, you can ignore my marks here because I'd twisted this some already when I installed the four-wheel parts kit. For you, you're going to want to turn this complete 180, so this line should be on the complete opposite side of the marks you made. Since I already had this kit on and everything was twisted some from that already, I'm not moving 100%, but basically you want this stud lined up with the very front with your line, and that should get everything in the correct position. Alright, so we're about to put the spacer on. We just got these bolts go in here. Now you turn that over, the bolts go down, and well, it makes it hard to put these in because these bolts are so far down you can't quite feed them through. So I just stuffed some paper in there to keep them from falling out and keep them from falling down. Because I had a crap ton of packing paper anyway from the packaging of everything that I've gotten, so I just balled a little bit up on the other side. Now we can set this on, and again we do that. So this was the inside, but now it's out on the outside. But then when we put this on, it moves that one back to the back side. So now we can just put the original strut hardware on here. And tighten these down. These go to 35 foot-pounds. So once you torque this down, this is ready to go and be reinstalled. But before we do that, we're going to come back over here. We're going to change out the upper control arm. Now, here it's just one long bolt that goes through. And take that off, you got to pull the bolt out. Now, however, on this side, we have a challenge because we have the steering linkage that's going to be in the way. So we're going to have to disconnect that as well. Before I do that, I didn't take the whole wheel well liner out on the other side. I just took like this and a couple of the undid these and this pin on the other side, and that gave me enough room. I might have to take this whole one out just since we are going to have to mess around with that steering shaft or steering linkage to make room to pull that bolt out. Alright, so this steering linkage is disconnected. It's got a 10mm bolt that goes through, and it's tapped on the other side, so it threads through there, and it just connects to the steering shaft, which I have pushed up some, which allowed me to pull that down and out of the way. So now we should be able to pull this out without any interference. It's, I believe, if I remember, it's 24mm on this side and 19 on that side, or 20, I don't know. Let me get the wrenches and we'll figure out what those sizes are. Now the driver's side, there's a lot more, apparently there's a lot more stuff in the way on this side than there is on the other side. Alright, so there's the bolt that was on the front, or the nut. Now this whole thing should just slide out. And there's the bolt that's going through everything. And then the upper control arm. So now we're ready to put the new control arm back on, but we got to get that ready. So let's go back over to the bench. Alright, so we are switching from a ball joint here on the OEM one and going over to a spherical bearing here in the BDS kit. Now we have these misalignment spacers, and these are just going to get pressed in. So on the top side we have this rounded one, on the bottom side we have the tapered one. That's actually going to be what goes into the steering knuckle, and then a bolt that goes through them both. So if you have bearing press or something like that, this would probably be a great time to use that. I'm just going to use this oversized punch. Make sure it's seated all the way down there, which it is. I'm going to turn it upside down. Now this side's going to fit in there. Grab my rubber mallet. And that one's being a little stubborn. Let's grab our... There we go. Now we're nice and tight. And that's going to fit down in there. We got a washer. We got our nut. Now this is ready to go back on the car. Alright, so we're ready to put the shock back in. The high side goes out. It's got this taper on it, so the high side out, low side in, which is how our hardware is going to work as well. Let me just slide this up and in there. Got a washer and a nut supplied. And they're just going to go on top. Now, this is why I put the paper underneath those bolts, because without them, they just fall back down into that spacer when it's sitting up like that, and you can't get them started. So stuck that paper, and you could probably put a little bit of tape around the bolt heads or something like that too, just to something in there to keep some friction on there, keep those bolts from sliding down. Otherwise, I don't know how you're supposed to get them started. And tighten those down. We gotta put our bolts back in on the bottom. Alright, so let's go ahead and stick this bolt back up here. Kind of in position. Grab our control arm. Push it all the way through and put the nut on the other side. And I got to tighten this up a bit, but I'm not going to torque it down or snug it. You want this to be free moving for right now, because you don't want to torque it down and have it binding down here. So you want to actually wait until you have it setting down at the correct height, sitting on its own weight and everything. That way it's in its natural position, and then you want to torque it there. That way the bushings are working correctly and working with the suspension instead of working against it. So I'm just going to put the bolt on, snug it down, and then we can start putting everything back together. Then we can get this knuckle in there. So it's good. Carefully move that into position. I don't want to. Now the spherical bearing is much tighter than the ball joint was, and you can't just kind of move it into place right away. Takes a little persuading. Yeah, that slid it up enough, I think. I should be able to get the washer on there now. There we go. Now we got the washer on there. We got the nut. We can just go ahead and tighten this down. Now we're turning the whole bolt. So we got to grab. So now we got an H10. A 10mm hex for the bolt on the top. Now let me check what the torque on this is supposed to be. Alright, so this is supposed to be 46, so I'm glad I didn't just torque it down to 66. So there we go, we got that. So now we're going to have to reconnect our steering linkage. Just want to double check that my steering wheel didn't change positions on me. It was slightly turned when I parked. We look at the wheel positions, are slightly turned, so that's good. But I think I got the holes lined up there. There we go. And then that's just a 10mm. Get everything tightened down. Get the wheel on there, and then we'll set everything on the ground and then torque. Double check our torques on the top hat, torque our upper control arms, and we should be done with the front. Oh, almost forgot one thing. I got this cap. It's got this O-ring on it, just slaps on there like so. And then they sent this little thing of grease, little baby, that just sits right on top of there, covers that up. And that's what we're looking like. We beefed up the upper control arm, hopefully added another 2 inches, inch and a half, 2 inches to our lift, and we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and get the wheels on so we can set this down and torque everything and see where we're sitting at. Now you have the fun job of, while it's sitting on its own weight, getting in there and torquing that bolt, that long bolt, to it's 100 and, let me double check here, yeah, 122 foot-pounds. So that's a lot of torque to put on that bolt, especially when you don't have a lot of room to move. Didn't have a lot of room to move with the tire off, so now that the tire's on, it's even going to be less. But you'd need to do it with the weight on there. Yeah, I'll try to get these torque down, and then we can move on to the back. We're a little bit squatted right now. We're gonna fix that, do the rear lift now. So I'll get that all jacked up, get the wheels off. So we'll see what the difference between the rear spring and the front spring is when it comes to the lift kit. It is Saturday. The transport company's supposed to call me on Monday and let me know which day of the week they're coming next week to put the car on there. And well, I still don't have the wheels, I still don't have the tires, and once those get here, I still need to get them mounted, balanced, and everything, and get them on here. Got a couple of smaller things that if they don't show up, no big deal, but the wheels and tires are kind of a big part of the build for the show. So yeah, like I said, it's Saturday. I'm going to get the rear lift started. Hopefully that doesn't take too long, and by the time we're wrapping that up, our lights will be here and we can start getting those in and get that all wrapped up this weekend. Now, same thing with the front strut. We gotta take everything apart, but this time we have a much smaller preload spacer that's going to slide on there, and that's just going to butt up on there, it looks like. So that just slides up a little bit, not quite as much. And then our bump stop is also shorter, but other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. Now that we put that on, we can put our and you can see we moved it about an inch this time. Then we could put our boot cover, on, and put the bump stop on there. And then again, we got the little cap. Sit on there. Just tap that on gently. Put our top hat back on. I put her spring shock back into the spring, get the top hat on. Alright, so now the instructions are saying the OEM studs need to be trimmed down so they're exactly 1 inch, which basically just means right to the beginning of the thread. Now, if you have a 2-door, this is ready to go on as is. If you have a 4-door like I do, you got to put a spacer on there. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that geometry works out and how it's different between the 2-door and the 4-door, but that's the case. And so now, if you have the black shocks and a 4-door, this is your setup. If you have the black shocks and a 2-door, that's going to be your setup. And it just goes back in the car the same way you took it out. Put the top hat in, bottom bolt in, and tighten everything up. All right, now here we go. We are back on the ground. Everything's looking good. Now that everything's done, let's measure the front. And it looks now at 41 inches from the ground to the fender. And in the back, we're at 41 inches. I don't remember what we were at before we started, but I thought it was close to the same. Climbing in, I could feel a difference for sure. Let's take a quick drive around the block and see how things feel. The steering actually feels a bit stiffer, and I have a feeling that's just because of the spherical bearings being much stiffer than the ball joints that were on the other upper control arms. And that will probably loosen up a little bit with a bit of movement, but I mean, everything's very stiff feeling, and not in a bad way. It just, everything feels like very tight, like it should. So probably need to drive it around a little bit more to get a better feeling for it, but for just the initial feelings, I mean, it feels good. No complaints. The ride's still fine. Ride quality's fine. If it might have stiffened up a little bit, but not bad. That is installing the BDS 4-inch lift. From what I understand, BDS is going to have coilover kits. They use the same upper control arms. From 4.5 inch, it's going to have to be it's going to have to use a differential drop, and then they're going to have a 6.5 inch one that also uses cross member and differential drop stuff, which are still in development. Those aren't ready. The coilovers aren't ready yet, so we went with the spacer lift. It's 4 inches if you're on a base suspension, or 3 inches if you're on Sasquatch suspension, whatever, or the Badlands or Wild Track, I guess, whichever ones have the yellow shocks. It's 3 inches over that. The installation's pretty simple. The parts are, you know, I like I don't want to talk bad about the 4-wheel parts kit. It served its purpose. It is a very basic kit. Yeah, I don't think they did a whole lot of research into it. They just said, hey, here's some spacers. It'll add this much lift to the vehicle and it's good to go, and which is fine for what it was. But these, you could tell just the way they're designed of the spacers and how everything fit better. Everything was actual custom fit to fit directly on the top hat, not sit on top of the thing. It fit all the curves and all the little grooves and everything fit perfectly. Definitely much more thought and research, I think, went into developing these parts. And I know, like, there are other kits that are going to be coming, I think, are going to be even better. So I'm looking forward to them. That means I probably will be doing another lift at some point in the future, switching from a spacer lift to an actual coilover lift at some point when they become available. But for now, this is what we got. Hope you enjoyed the video. I didn't go too in depth on removing the coilovers and everything. They said if you need more information on how to get the coilovers out or anything like that, there is a video that I did when I did the 4-wheel parts install that I went more in depth and all that, so I didn't go too in deep with that in this video. But hopefully it helped, gave you an idea of what all is involved with the BDS lift. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you would like to see more videos like this in the future, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.